December 7th, 1941. The Pacific was calm that morning, eerily calm. The kind of silence that almost feels wrong before something unthinkable happens. The USS Enterprise cut through the water like a blade, her crew unaware that history was about to turn its page in fire and smoke. Lieutenant Clarence Dickinson leaned against the fuselage of his Dauntless dive bomber, squinting at the horizon. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, and the air smelled like salt and engine oil. His gunner, Miller, young, barely 20, was joking with one of the deckhands, pretending not to be nervous. "What's the first thing you'll do when we land at Pearl?" Miller asked, adjusting his flight gloves. "Find a decent cup of coffee," Dickinson replied, smiling. "Real coffee, not that bilge they serve here." Miller laughed, a sound too bright for the world they were flying into. Minutes later, engines roared to life. Two SBD Dauntless bombers rolled down the deck, gathering speed, then lifted gracefully into the open sky. Above the ocean, the world looked peaceful, blue, endless, safe. They had no idea. As the pair flew toward Oahu, Dickinson noticed a strange column of smoke far in the distance. At first, he thought it was a training exercise. Then, black bursts of flak appeared in the air, puffs of anti-aircraft fire. His heart dropped. "That's no drill," he muttered. Pearl Harbor was burning. Within seconds, two Japanese Zeros burst through the clouds like silent predators. Their wings flashed silver under the morning sun. The Dauntless was built for bombing runs, not dogfighting, but there was no choice. The hunters had found them. The first volley of 20mm cannon fire screamed past Dickinson's canopy. McCarthy, his wingman, pulled a hard left turn, trying to draw fire. The maneuver saved Dickinson, but exposed McCarthy's aircraft. Rounds tore into the Dauntless, punching holes through metal and smoke. The plane caught fire. Dickinson steadied his controls, trying to help, but the Zeros were too fast. In the rear seat, Miller opened fire. His twin .30 caliber guns spat flame as he tracked the Zeros overhead. Tracers carved through the sky, glancing off the enemy's wings. One of the Zeros broke formation, climbing high to dive again. "Coming around, 6 o'clock low," Miller shouted. "I see him," Dickinson said through clenched teeth. He dove hard, feeling the G-forces press him into the seat. The world spun. Blue sky, white clouds, black smoke, chaos in every direction. Bullets whipped past the canopy. Miller fired again. One Zero peeled away, trailing oil, but the other came head-on. Dickinson squeezed the trigger. His 4 nose guns flashed, but the tracers missed. The Japanese pilot rolled away at the last second, too fast to follow. Then, out of the corner of his eye, Dickinson saw McCarthy's plane trailing thick smoke. Flames crawled along the fuselage. Seconds later, it erupted. For one brief, desperate moment, a parachute opened. Just one. Miller's voice cracked. "Only one chute, sir." Dickinson said nothing. There was no time to mourn. 2 more Zeros were closing in. "Miller, reload." "Already on it." They turned, twisted, dove. Every move rehearsed 100 times, but never under this kind of terror. Miller fired again and again until the guns clicked empty. "I think I got one," he shouted. Dickinson glanced back. The enemy fighter burned, spiraling down into the sea. For a second, it almost felt like victory. But 4 more appeared. Cannon shells slammed into the Dauntless, the cockpit filled with smoke, instruments shattered. "Miller, status." "Out of ammo, sir. All 6 cans." The Dauntless shook violently. Dickinson's hands trembled on the stick. He remembered that morning, Miller's grin, his laugh. "Don't worry, kid," he'd said. "Stick with me and we'll be home by noon." Then, a scream. The right wing lurched. The plane spun into a hard dive. Dickinson fought the controls, but the stick jammed. He kicked the rudder, yanked the throttle. Nothing. "Miller," he shouted again. No answer. He unbuckled his harness, trying to disconnect the radio line tangled around his legs. It wouldn't come loose. Smoke filled the cabin. The altimeter spun down fast, 2,000 feet. He grabbed the cable with both hands and ripped it free. Then he jumped. Wind tore at his face. The world screamed past him. Sky, ocean, earth, all blending into one violent blur. 800 feet. He had seconds. He found a ripcord and yanked. The chute opened with a violent snap. For a heartbeat, he floated. Then he hit the ground hard, rolling through grass and dirt. Silence. The Dauntless exploded somewhere nearby, a thunderous roar that shook the air. Dickinson lay on his back, breathing hard, staring at the smoke rising into the sky. Miller was gone. He sat there for a long time. The only sound was the distant crackle of flames. Somewhere inside, guilt began to take root, a quiet, unbearable guilt.
Back aboard the Enterprise, Admiral Halsey was a storm contained in human form. The reports from Pearl Harbor came in waves, ships destroyed, hundreds dead. He slammed his fist on the table. "Battle stations," he ordered. "All hands prepare for combat." The ship turned toward Hawaii at full speed. Hours later, Dickinson stumbled into the Ford Island airfield, covered in soot and dirt. Without mentioning he'd been shot down, he reported for duty. The commanding officer didn't ask questions. There was no time for sympathy. "Get in another Dauntless," the officer said. "We need eyes over the water." Dickinson nodded. "Yes, sir." Inside, his chest burned, not from smoke, but from the memory of Miller's scream. The Japanese fleet had vanished. The carriers responsible for Pearl Harbor had already slipped away into the vast Pacific, leaving only submarines prowling the waves. When the Enterprise reached Pearl Harbor was still burning. Ships lay capsized, the air reeked of fuel and death. Halsey's face was grim as he looked out from the deck. 6 hours, he said. Refuel, rearm, and we go back out. Every man aboard wanted revenge, but for Dickinson, it was personal. The next few days blurred together, endless patrols over the open sea. He barely slept. He flew until his eyes stung from exhaustion. Each time he took off, the empty seat behind him reminded him of Miller. Then, 3 days later, came a report. A Japanese submarine sighted on the surface near Hawaii, recharging batteries. An American pilot spotted it first and dove. The subcrew scrambled for an emergency dive, but it takes 90 seconds for a vessel that size to submerge. 90 seconds of terror. The bomb fell too soon. It detonated against the waves beside the hull. The submarine was damaged but alive. "Damn it, send more planes," came the call from the Enterprise. One of those planes was Dickinson's. His new gunner, younger even than Miller, adjusted the rear gun nervously. "Sail 4 ready for takeoff." "Copy, Sail 4, came the radio. "Submarine confirmed. Proceed with caution." Dickinson gave a sharp nod. "I'm counting on it." Engines roared. The Dauntless hurtled off the deck into the blue. Down below, the I-70 submarine limped on the surface. The Japanese crew worked frantically, sealing cracks, patching ballast tanks. They knew they were exposed. A lookout suddenly froze. A speck in the sky, growing larger. "American bomber!" he shouted. From 5,000 feet above, Dickinson spotted the submarine's dark silhouette against the glittering ocean. His pulse quickened. "This is Sail 4. I have visual on the sub. Commencing attack." He armed his 1,000-pound bomb and pushed the nose down. The Dauntless screamed into its dive, the wind howling against the fuselage. Below, Japanese gunners opened fire. Tracer rounds streaked upward like fireflies in daylight. Bullets ripped past the canopy, punching holes in the wings. Dickinson gritted his teeth. "Hold steady," he muttered. At 3,000 feet, the world became a blur of light and motion. He felt the pull of gravity, the resistance of air fighting his descent. The altimeter spun. 2,000 feet. He waited. 1,500. 1,000. He released the bomb. The Dauntless jolted upward as the weapon fell. A heartbeat later, impact. A colossal explosion ripped through the sea. The deck crew of the I-70 were thrown into the air. Smoke and spray filled the sky. Oil bubbled to the surface. Dickinson pulled up hard, circling the area. The submarine still floated, though motionless. For a long moment, it seemed to survive. Then it began to sink. A single bubble rose from the depths, then another, and another, until the surface erupted in a violent burst of air and oil. The I-70 vanished beneath the waves. Over the radio, cheers broke out. Voices overlapped, shouting in triumph. But Dickinson's tone was quiet, almost reverent. "This one's for you, Miller."
The I-70 became the first large Japanese ship sunk by American forces in World War II. It marked the moment the Enterprise and the men aboard her began the long fight back. As Dickinson turned his Dauntless toward home, the sea below was calm again. The same calm as that morning, before everything changed. He looked down at the dark waters where the submarine had disappeared and thought of Miller, of McCarthy, of the laughter on the deck just days before. War had taken everything from them, their innocence, their peace, their friends. But in that moment, at least, it had given something back. Not victory, not glory, just closure. He whispered into the radio, not caring if anyone heard. "Rest easy, kid. We got them." The Enterprise steamed on toward the horizon. The Pacific stretched out before them, vast, quiet, endless. And though the war had only just begun, for Lieutenant Clarence Dickinson, one part of it was already over.